Okay, I'm sorry. I have to go back to the beginning of the Mishnah. Ein ma'arvin pears bepears afilu chadashim b'chadashim. If someone made up, I'm going to sell you 20 bushels of pears from field A, you're not allowed to put some pears of field B in because a person bought pears of field A. You surely cannot mix in newer pears and older pears because newer pears have not yet dried out, and therefore they are sort of puffed up a little bit. The older ones are already dried out, so you really get more for your money on older grain. You're allowed to mix in stronger wine with weaker wine, as Rashi says, because it benefits it. Rashi says the harder wine, which would mean the less diluted wine, the raw wine, would add flavor to the weaker wine. Ein ma'arvin shmora yain v'yain. You're not allowed to mix in the shmorim with the wine. Aval noisen lo shmora, if you can give him a shmora. This seems to be a stira when they obey. First it said you can't give him to him, and then it said you could give him to him. Rashi, the Gemara is going to explain this paradox. Michin is arav mayim v'yainoi. What if somebody had water mixed into his wine? So his wine is now diluted. Lo yim kerenu b'chanus. He should not sell it in the store as if it's raw wine, ella imkein hoidiyah, unless he notifies every single customer that wants to buy this wine that there's water mixed into it. However, v'lo l'tager, to sell it to somebody who's like a broker, a whole lot of this wine, you wouldn't be able to do that, afal pi shehoidiyah, even though you notify. Why? What is this tager going to do? He's going to sell it, and he's not going to declare that it has water mixed into it, and therefore you shouldn't sell it to him. It's like a shtickle lufneiver. Mokim shenahagul hatel mayim v'yayin yatilu. Where it is the minhag, you could do it. So what Rashi tells us is that everybody knows this is how it's done. So this is what people expect to be buying when they buy something. Hatager noitel mehegranos. A wholesaler, he's someone who buys from many different suppliers of wheat, but he mixes it all together and he sells it as one item. Or mehegitos from 5 different presses. So Rashi says it's normal when you're buying from a tiger, you're getting from multiple producers. But Rashi don't advertise that you're selling grade A product when you're mixing in some less quality, some lower grade product. That's not allowed. Tanuraban. Ein tzarich loymar chadashos me'arba v'yishalis mishalish. It's pashut that if new produce is worth less, you get 4 for $1. And older produce, you pay more for it, it's more dense, and you only get 3 for $1. Surely there ain't ma'arvin, you can't mix chadashos into yishanos. But elafilu chadashos mishalos v'yishanos ma'arba. Even if for some reason chadashos cost more money than the old, so you think, why can't they mix it in? I'm putting in better product into here. Still ain't ma'arvin mishum she'adam ra'ich eliyashan. There are certain people who are bedavka looking for fresh wheat, and they want to dry it out. Maybe they want to use it for next season. Whatever their intention is, it doesn't matter. The main thing is you're not allowed to mix in something that they wouldn't want. Be'emes amru. B'yayin yitir la'arav kosher barach b'pnei shemashpichai. Amr Rabbi Lozer, Ada Amr, which Rashi teaches is Zoysei Meres. Because of this halacha that we learned, that you're allowed to mix it in, because it gets better. Kol be'emes amru halacha. Whenever it says be'emes amru, like it says in our Mishnah, that means we paskin like that. So we paskin, you're allowed to mix a little bit of kosher barach. Amr Nachman, uvei nagito shon. You can't always do it. You're only allowed to do this mixing around the press time. But nowadays, Rashi says, by nagito shonu the mashpicha. That's when it makes it better. That's when they blend together and they become one homogeneous mixture. The nasim tam echad. Aval achar gitois shekvar kolat kol echad reichay v'taimoy. Once it's after the time of the pressing, where every individual product already developed its own time and its own aroma, ein mashpicha lepeg. When that messes it up, I guess when the wine is fresh, it could still be blended and the tastes will blend. Otherwise, they're going to clash each other. And nowadays, that the minig is even not benagitos to mix wines together. Amar Papa, it's allowed the yodi v'kamach. People are aware of it and they're moichel because this is the norm. This is what people expect. Rabacha bar Ravika Amar Hamani Rabachi. It's going according to Rabacha. Tanya Rabacha Matir v'davar hanita. Rabacha has a different story. He says anything you could taste, there's no taina. So whatever I mix, it doesn't matter because before you're going to buy it, you're going to taste it. So you tasted it, you accepted it. The Maggid Mishnah builds from here a very important halacha l'maisa that no one can come back and have tinus to you if you sell something that they could have examined. You sell a suit, they could have tried it on. You can't come back and say I ripped you off because of this and that. You could have tried it on. So anything that I don't declare, but I say buyer beware, no refunds, try it on, test it, see it for yourself, as is. That's 100% not I know, and you're allowed to do that because the person could check it and test it and discover anything about it. Same thing with food products. Taste it. If you don't like it, don't buy it. It says, what do you mean, the armored ratio in Marvin Cloud, you can't mix it at all. So what does it mean? But you can give him a shmar. It means if you don't tell him, that's where you can't mix in shmar. But if you tell him, then you could mix in his shmarim. It can't mean that. Because look at the Sefer. The Sefer says, you shouldn't sell mixed wine in a store unless you notify every customer. That means we don't introduce this concept of declaring this to the customer until later on in the Mishnah. That means all of the previous cases in the Mishnah are not discussing a case where there's a notification to the customer. So we're back to the same kasha. What does it mean? You're not allowed to mix shmorim from a previous barrel that got left over into today's barrel. And Rashi says what this really means, you're not allowed to mix the shmorim of one barrel into another barrel. Usually every day you're opening up a new barrel of wine to sell. You're not allowed to mix shmorim from one batch of wine into another, because that will ruin the flavor. But you could mix in the shmorim that come with this batch of wine. Gewaltig. Let's see Rashi. From the wine itself, today and yesterday is not the main point. It just means some different barrels. Some 2 barrels. Normally, today and yesterday, you would have used 2 different barrels. And you don't want to mix because the shmorim of one barrel will ruin the flavor of another barrel that the shmorim are not from. When you're pouring wine out, Rashi says the word shofar describes the action called over at soul, anything that's clear and that flows. That you transfer over and you pour from one keli to another keli. You pour it slowly so that all the shmorim shouldn't go with it. That's the act of shvia. Slowly pouring something over from one container to another container while being careful that the pieces we're not going to get in, we're not going to transfer it. You are allowed to mix in the shmorim of that thing. If someone had water mixed into his wine, he should not sell it in the chanus unless he's notifying each customer. Rava bought wine from a store. Mozga, he mixed it as the normal is. Tama, he tasted it. Lo have a boss, and he didn't like it. So he wanted to return it. So what did he do? He sent it back to the chanus. But what he did was he gave a tagor by returning it. He's giving a tagor wine that's mixed with water. Amalei Abaye, how could you do that, Rava? You're not allowed to give mixed wine to a tager, even if you tell him there's water mixed into it, because it's going to be it's Amalei Rava said, no, my mixed wine is different. He won't fool anybody with it. You know why? Mazgadidi made the idea. It's very well known because while everybody mixes 1 part water to 2 parts wine, I mix 1 part. I'm sorry, 1 part wine to 2 parts water. I mix 1 part wine to 3 parts water. So I dilute it so much more. And therefore, it'll be known. We'll be worried that it'll add some more raw wine to it so that people won't notice that it's so diluted. So then you shouldn't even be able to sell water to anybody, because if you sell water, maybe he'll mix it. And only if what you're selling could actually be sold and fool people, that wouldn't be allowed. But once it cannot be sold as is, you don't have to be choshesh that he'll modify it, because then you can never sell anything to anybody. Where if it's Dominic, then that's how it's done. Whatever the norm is, half, a third, a quarter, that's what's acceptable. And this means bein hagitos, is when you're allowed to add water. Lo yechalek achemveni kloyos ve'agoyzon latinoikos mipnei shu magidin lo vayetzlai. You're not allowed to give the children nuts and I'm not even sure. Kloyos are roasted wheat kernels. There were treats for the little kids so that they would tell the mommy, let's go over there. Why? Because it's giving you an unfair edge on the competition. The Gemara is going to explain shortly. They're matter because who said you can't do a promotion? You could do the same thing. Oh. I remember Mrs. Wall used to give us pieces of salami, that sort of thing. And I remember in Hermes, they used to give us a cookie. Yeah. I was actually thinking of thrills as I was saying. Well, I still taste the salami. It was so much fun when Mrs. Wall gave me a piece of salami. You're not allowed to drop your prices to undercut everybody else. Never mind. Someone who drops his prices to bring the price down should be gebenched. You shouldn't separate the best grisen and then sell them, but you're going to also be mixing in poor quality. So you advertise with the top quality, which you have in your display cases is the best of the best. That's going to attract buyers. But then when you actually fill up the containers from the back, you give him standard stuff. Everybody agrees that you surely should not have only the top layer that's high quality and below it have lower quality stuff. That's mamish fooling the guy. You're not allowed to be the farchis, which the Gemara explains what it is, but whatever it is, it's something that makes these products look better than they really are. You're talking about an adam, it's speaking about when you're selling a slave, you're not allowed to make the slave look better than it is. Why do the Rabbanan allow you to give the kids clothes for guys? The territory is because he could tell the merchant, you could do the same. The Amar I'm a maflik, I'm goozy, I'm going to give out nuts, you can give out almonds. Prunes. Rashi says prunes, but the other Rishonim will learn that it means almonds. You're not allowed to drop your prices. It's a good thing. My type of Rabbanan, why the Rabbanan say it's a good thing, turning on to Samach Mefez, that Gemara Mishum de Kamarvach L'Taira, because you're lowering the price for everybody. And that's a good thing for the public. I don't think your fellow merchants are going to be happy with you when you undercut, but Lamaisa, it's going to benefit the world because it's going to lower the prices. Man Chachamim, who are the Chachamim? Zakti Gemara, Rabbi Acha, the Tanya Bacha Mater B'Dav Anir. If something is visible, in other words, Rashi Alo Lekeach, Alo Yochal Lekeach, L'Rosh Lahavin, Madebe Apsoilus, Haniver Me'elu Shesta Becher. The problem is you clean out the product and then you charge more, and you charge more for it. That's not a problem because anyone buying it knows normal product, it has psoilus in it, and it's worth less. This is worth more, and they can figure out how much it's worth it for them to buy the cleaner product. So you're not ripping them off because you're overcharging them. They can make their own calculation as to whether or not your increased price is worth it. As Rashi says, "V'toivloi l'halis b'demaim shaleilu yeser alkein v'pnei tarech." I'm willing to pay more if it's pre-clean because I don't have to clean it now. Right? People pay a fortune for bodek. Why? They know it's a fortune, but they know that they're saving them the time of checking. Ein mefachas and loyas adam loyas akelim. What does it mean? Tanur about ein misharvetin. You're not misharvet. What does sharvet mean? Rashi says it's like a stick. What does it mean? A stick? Like a stick stands up tall, so too you make the hair of the animal stand up tall and make the mane look bigger. Like when the mane of a lion is spread out. What? Like the stramos. That's right. Like the 6-story stramos. Ein misharvetin a behema. They noichim b'krabayim. If you sell intestines, if someone sells kishke, he shouldn't inflate the kishke so they should look big and fat. Sell them in their natural state. The insurance of basa b'mayim, it whitens the meat and makes it look fatter. My ein misharvetin hacha tirgamu. Here they explained what it means is maya de chizri. Rashi says maya de chizri is mashkin oison meisubin. They would give the animals to drink meisubin, like water that grain soaked in it. It blows them up a little bit. It makes them a little bit full, and that makes their hair stick out better, and it makes them look healthier. Ziri Amar Rav Kahana Miskafta. Rav Masavas Kirtuf. They use special combs, I believe, that would make the hair stand up. Shmuel Shara Lemirma Tumi Lesarbu. Shmuel would allow, the way I understand this, normally there's like fringes that stick out of the perimeter of a baguette, and he would weave something into them. So instead of them being fringes, they would become like a hard baguette, and that would make it look bigger and better. So Shmuel allowed that. Karmi. Rashi's Cheskuse Karmi is if they would have begodim that have nice pictures on them. If you would wash them with this meisubin, it would make the picture look cleaner and fresher. It would make the beged look newer. Rabbi Shara Lamedak Tzardi, Rashi says Lahadek Bigde Canvas B'Makvus H Sheyira Chutandak. What I believe it means is they would take a piece of fabric and stretch it over a frame. By stretching over a frame, it made the individual threads look thinner, and that was a higher quality beged. Is that what he says over there? A mechbesh is a frame that they would stretch. I'm sorry? They would beat it. But normally if we stretched over a frame and they would beat it, we learned when we were learning the process of making a fabric, that's how they would do it. They would stretch it over a frame and they would beat it. Rava Charlotte Slume Giri. Rashi says it means Rava allowed them to draw pictures of arrows on a beged. I guess it made it look newer, made it look better. Rav Papa Bar Shmuel Charlotte Slume Dekule to draw pictures on baskets. So if you had a basket and you drew pictures on it, I guess it made the basket look better and people would pay more for it. How could all these things be allowed? If it's new, you're allowed to do all these things. Why? It's only made to make it look better, Rashi. And someone who wants to pay more because he thinks it looks nicer, that's his choice. But if it's old, it makes old product look new. It's like rolling back an odometer. That's not allowed. What type of pirchus would you do to make a person look better? There was this old Eved who was a goy, and he wanted to sell himself as Nebuchadnezzar, but he knew nobody would pay much for him because he was an old, washed-out guy. So what did he do? He made himself look young. He went and dyed his beard and his hair, so he should look young, and this way people will buy him. So he went to Rava and he says, Rava, maybe you want to buy me as a slave? Amar lay, Amar lay, Zivnon, buy me. Amar lay, Rava answered, you aniyim b'nei veisecha. You know who I want to support? Give parnasa to? Yid. So I'd rather hire Yidden instead of buying a slave because that's better. It's a better thing for a Yid to do. I don't need to be worried about your parnasa. I'm going to be worried about the parnasa of the Yid. So also Papa Shmuel. So he came to Papa Shmuel. Zavna, he bought him. Yom Echad, one day, Amalei Ashken Maya. He told the guy, go to the river and start bringing barrels of water. I want to have water to drink. So what did he do? Azal, he went back. He took out the coloring and he made himself look old again. And then he told her, Papa, how could you ask me to do something like that? I'm old enough to be your grandfather. I'm older than your father. I'm old enough to be your grandfather. And you're going to make me do such heavy work? Are you not embarrassed? Kari Nafshesh, where Papa said, oh, did I mess up? Tzaddik mitzar nechla. To Rava was a tzaddik, he only wanted to get a parnas Eden. He was saved from the tzara. The Yavayachad of Namde Sakar, who came afterwards and fell in and bought this guy who was a waste of time. You know, there's a story with this very old man who married a very young, beautiful woman. So somebody was speaking to his friend and said, wow, look at that. I wonder how he got her. He must have lied about his age. Right? He must have lied about his age. So they asked him, tell me, how did you marry such a young woman? He said, I lied about my age. So he said, because he was like 85 years old. He said, what did you say? That you're 65 years old? He said, no, I said that I'm 99 years old. Now we're learning about ribbis. So the pasuk says, when it comes to ribbis, the pasuk says, "In kasbach es kasbach, loy sitein loy beneshech." Clearly, he's talking about a malva. Don't give your money to somebody with neshech. Uvemarbis loy sitein achlech. And for marbis, you shouldn't give food. Which means even if you're lending payers and you're taking back more payers, that will be also as well. We need to know what is neshech and what is marbis. The Gemara is going to tell us right after that. Neshech means I'm hurting you, meaning I'm giving you $100 and I'm taking away from you $110. Marbis doesn't focus on whether you're hurting or not. It focuses on me. I'm giving up 100, I'm getting 110, I'm benefiting. The question is, can you have one without the other? And that's something that the Gemara is going to focus on. Because it seems like the pasuk is saying two separate isurim. There's an isur neshech, there's an marbis, and one and the other might not be connected. Then it says, L'shashech lachicha. This is speaking already about the loiva. L'shashech lachicha, don't give to your brother neshech kesef, neshech oichel, neshech koldover asher yishach. Okay, so those are the two psukim that we're basing the isur ribbis on. So Frank the Mishnah. It seems like there's two things here. Ezel neshech vezut harbis. What is neshech and what's harbis? And we're soon going to see in the Mishnah that it's the Mishnah assumes that it's not two different isurim. And when the Mishnah describes neshech, it'll describe the isur ribis deraisa. And when the Mishnah describes ribis, it's going to talk about ribis derabana. Clearly, the Tana is expressing that there are no two isurim here, and that's what the Gemara is going to deal with. Ezel neshech vezut harbis. Ezel neshech. Hamal v'sela b'dinar. I lend you a sela, which is 4 dinar, and I have you pay me back 5 dinar. There's ribis there. Sasayim chitin b'shalish. I lend you 2 soft chitin, and you pay back 3. Also, that's also the pnei shu noshe. You're biting the other guy. You're taking away from him more than you're giving. Be'ezeu tarbis. What is tarbis? And now the Mishnah is going to explain the concept of saw b'saw, which is only midirabana. Hamarba pairs. That's when you give too many pairs. Ketzad. Logach heimenu chitin v'dinar zov akur. I bought from you chitin when 1 kur costed a dinar of zov. V'chein ashar, and that was the going rate. So I didn't actually give you pairs. What happened was I'm a merchant, and you bought it from me. So you paid me money now, so that throughout the season I will supply you little by little with chitin at the rate of dinar zov akur based on that pricing. But what happened was after I had your money, the price of wheat went up. Amdu chitin b'lamed dinar. So it went up from 24 dinar, which is a dinar zov, to 30. So it went up. Now, what happened is the person who bought it from me, I'm the merchant, the person who bought it comes and tells me, give me my chitin based on the lower price. Shani writes because I want to sell them the ligach benyan. I want to buy wine. So give me my wheat that's based on the original price, which would be a lot of wheat that's worth more than I paid for it already. It already went up, and I'll sell it because I want to buy wine. So the merchant says, you know what? Why should I give you Paris, and you can go buy wine. I have wine too. Let's now say that you don't have a value of 24 dinarim. Now the lama dinarim versus the 1 dinar is the lama dinarim is silver, and the dinar zav is gold. So give me. So there's 24 dinarim of kesef in 1 dinar of zav. So you know what? Instead of me giving you wheat and then you're going to swap in the wheat for wine, I have wine too. I'll give you 30 zuz worth of wine, but I'm not going to deliver it because you don't need it all in one shot. But the yain, he doesn't have wine. So that's where there's a problem of ribis derabon. If he was actually going to take the wheat, Zok Rashi, it wouldn't have been a problem. Why wouldn't there have been a problem? Because if I have stock of the wheat, you're allowed to do that. And even if I don't have stock of the wheat, but it's already out there, the shar is out there, it's not ribis either, because if I don't have it, we can easily get it from other people. And that's why there is no concern. Okay. The ribis is if I give you wine. I say I'm going to give you wine, I don't have wine. That is the problem. The first round wasn't the problem. It's the second round that's the problem. But I will give you wine when I have it based on 30 zuz worth of wine. So let's see Rashi inside. Amrli ten lichitai. That would have been mutter. If he would have given him chit, even though he bought it when it was only worth 24, and now it's worth 30, that wouldn't have been a problem of ribis. But now telling you that I'm going to give you wine instead of the wheat, that's also. Why? Since he doesn't have wine. I'm saying I'm going to give you wine when I get it, that I don't have wine now, not allowed. Because maybe wine will go up from the price that we agreed on. Even though what's any different in the first round, but the first round it was allowed, even though he didn't have wheat. So why can you do it with wine? The Gemara is going to explain why the second round is a problem, while the first round was not. Does that make sense? We'll have to wait for the Gemara. So Zog Tehel Gemara. Since the Mishnah didn't explain a second case of ribis deraisa, rather jumped into a case of ribis derabanan, what does it tell us? Michlal deraisa the neshech v'tarbis chadamilsi. It must be that the lav of neshech and the lav of tarbis are the same, because if not, the Mishnah should have told us what's the deraisa of neshech and what's the deraisa of tarbis. Correct Gemara, but Lamaisha, there's 2 psukim. How are you going to explain why there's 2 psukim, which seems to indicate that it's 2 different isurim? But correct Sivi, neshech kesef, v'ribis oicha. Correct Gemara, it might say that, it might express it as 2 different things, but think about it. Is it possible to have one without the other? V'tizbara, the yika neshech b'loy tarbis, v'tarbis b'loy neshech, it's impossible. Neshech b'loy tarbis, how are you going to find a case where neshech, where the loiv is being bitten, below tarbis, but the malva isn't benefiting? How are you going to have something like that? Hey chidam, let's say originally made a deal. I'll lend you $100, and you're going to pay back $120. Meikara kaimi meya bedanka. Originally, 100. Let's say it was $100. This 100 zuz was worth a danka. A danka was also a coin, and 100 zuz used to be valued at a danka. Now, when I'm paying you back, yes, I'm paying you back 120. But the problem is the danka went up, or the money went down, and now you're still giving him a danka. So basically, the receiver didn't get back any more. He might have gotten back more coins, 120 instead of 100, but Lamaisha, they're not worth more than the same danka that they were worth before. So therefore, nashech ika, the kanachas lay, you are biting the loivet, the kashalkamine midi, the lo yahid. You're taking from him an extra 20 that he didn't receive when you lent him the money. But for tarbus leka, but the malva is not benefiting the lesle ravka. He's not really profiting the danka uspe. He lent him a danka, the danka kashalkamine, and he's getting back a danka. Zok Gemara, it doesn't make sense to analyze it that way. Because soif, ibasa mekar aslas, if you look at the transaction when he made the loan, he's benefiting because he's asking for 120 back instead of 100. So Side the loy was losing, and he's benefiting. And ibasa b'soif aslas, and if you want to only look at the transaction at the end, then there's loy neshech chicha v'loy tarbis. Then there's no neshech or tarbis because he's giving back exactly the same danka. Visu, so clearly you cannot have neshech without tarbis. Now let's see, can you have tarbis without neshech? Visu tarbis by neshech hechedami. Yidayisif meya b'meya. So I said I'm going to give you 100, and you're going to give me back 100. So Rashi says we're talking about prutos. Meikara kaima meya b'danka. Originally, 100 prutos made up a danka. L'besoif meya b'chumsha. And then a 100 coins was worth more than a danka. It was worth more than a danka because a danka is 1/6 of a dinner, and now it's only 1/5 of a dinner. So it went up. It went up. If you follow the beginning, there's no neshech or tarbis because I'm not benefiting anything. And when it went up, well, then I rate neshech vari tarbis. He's giving me back more than I got. Therefore, we know that neshech and tarbis always travel together. So why do you have two separate psukim? Because if you take neshech, you have two isurim. One issur is that you're taking away something from somebody that you didn't give him, and the second issur that you're over is for benefiting from it. So there's a special lav for each perspective of the transaction. Taner Rabbanan. It says as kasbacha loisit and loy beneshech, which is speaking about a loiv, of course. I'm sorry, speaking of a malva, you're giving money. It's kasbacha loisit and loy beneshech. Uva marbis loisite nachlech, and for marbis you shouldn't give him food. So from this pasuk alone, only a neshech bekesef. I think the neshech only applies to a transaction where we're trading in money. For ribis boichel, and ribis refers to a transaction where we're trading in food. Neshech boichel minayin. How do you know you're also over the lav of neshech if you overcharge somebody with food? I'm going to give you 100, I'll pay you back 2 oranges. Talmud loimer neshech oich, because it does say neshech oich. Where does it say neshech oich? Looking at the pasuk, it says loisashech lachicha neshech kesef neshech oich. So we see for sure neshech applies to oichel as well. Ribis bekesef b'nayin. Does the word ribis, you over the lav of ribis when you're lending money and taking back more money? Talmud loimer neshech kesef. It says neshech kesef. How do you see from neshech kesef ribis for kesef? Zok Gemara on Amar Aleph. You don't need it to tell us neshech kesef. Sharek far nemar. It already says in the pasuk lo shashich lo achicha. It says lo shashich lo achicha neshech kesef. So we know neshech applies to kesef. So we have an extra neshech kesef. Tenayu inyan l'rabos kesef. It must be that it's l'ribis kesef. It's also referring to ribis of kesef. Zok Gemara enli ella beloiva. I would only know that there's an issue for the loiva because it says lo shashich lo achich is talking to the loiva. So I would have thought maybe only the loiva is over. The malva minayin. How do we know that this applies to the malva as well? He also says nisr. Nemer neshech beloiva, v'nemer neshech b'malva. The Torah has an issue neshech when the Torah is talking to the malva, which is loy eskas v'cholosid loy, and we have a pasuk of neshech referring to the loiva where it says loy sashech lo achicha. Ma neshech amar b'loiva. Just like when they said neshech by the loiva. Loy chalak l'voy ben kesef ben bekesef ben boigel ben neshech ben beribis. For whatever you take more of, whether it's of kesef or of oichel, you're over side the issur of neshech and side the issur of ribis of neshech amar b'malva l'sach l'boy ben bekesef ben beoichel ben beneshech ben beribis. Minayin the rabbis called over. How do you know that it's not only food and money? Anything where you're taking back more than what you're giving. Okay, let's stop here and we'll mention mamshich tomorrow. Shkoyach.